You're one of the U.S. attorneys who's on the National China Initiative with Attorney General Bill Barr. Tell us what is going on. We know the big arrest just happened here in Massachusetts with the Harvard researcher,
right,
who didn't disclose his ties and financial ties and otherwise to China.
Right.
Tell us what's going on here.
I think it was high time that the department did something like this. The Justice Department and the FBI have been warning about Chinese espionage, Chinese efforts to steal U.S. technology for at least 15 years. I mean, when Bob Mueller was the FBI director 15 years ago, he was testifying in Congress warning about the threat posed by Chinese efforts to steal U.S. technology and know-how. So we're behind the curve. We're not in front of it. And so about a year ago, Attorney General Sessions set up this sort of, it's not a task force, but this group of 5 U.S. attorneys, I'm one of them, led by John Demers, who runs the National Security Division of the Justice Department. And what he wanted was stepped up enforcement in this area, a higher profile for the cases in this area, more outreach to private companies and to universities about the risks here. And so, again, that was about a year ago, and I think we've achieved that. I think people now are more aware that there's a real threat from Chinese nationals, whether they are, intelligence officers or just private citizens, coming to the U.S., collecting U.S. technology or stealing U.S. trade secrets and taking it back to China.
Should guidelines be implemented for researchers, like say here in the United States, for professors? Because, for example, there are some good points that can be made by collaboration. Let's say two random countries, United States and China, or any country, wants to try and cure a disease. So scientists are working together to do that.
That's exactly right.
But there should be more disclosure on the part of these American researchers.
Right now, it's just about transparency, right? And then, as you said, what should follow this enforcement effort by the Justice Department is I do think the academic community needs some kind of guidelines. Because I think not unreasonably, a lot of academic researchers are saying to themselves, okay, I get what you're saying about not lying about working with the Chinese, but can I work with the Chinese? Like, what's allowed? What's not allowed? I'm happy to color within the lines, but just tell me what the lines are.
How big of a threat is student visa fraud? So students who are coming here, we think, to get an American education, but they're really here to commit Chinese espionage.
That does happen. We charged a case recently where a young woman was studying at Boston University. Turns out she was a lieutenant in the Chinese People's Liberation Army and omitted that, or we say, omitted that intentionally from her visa application. So that does happen, and we do several of those cases a year. I think that is an issue. The harder issue is you have a lot of Chinese nationals who come to the United States who they're just private citizens. They don't have to lie on their applications. They come here and they are students at universities here, or they are working in high tech here. And then nonetheless, either out of loyalty to China or they're being cajoled or threatened by the Chinese government, they steal technology from here and take it back to China. And sometimes it's very hard to detect that. It's very hard to stop it. I think this is the first concerted, aggressive effort by the Justice Department to tackle it. The Obama administration did some good work in this area in hacking cases against the Chinese, but this is broader based. And I think nationwide, we're doing a good job sort of generating cases that kind of make the point. You can go to private business or universities and tell them it's a problem, and they may or may not believe you. But once you put points on the board, meaning you bring cases, then they tend to believe you because you can show them something public.
So just to pivot now, I just want to talk to you about something we touched about last time we spoke, was about these drug consumption sites. There's liberal politicians who are pushing for this. They're saying we need to destigmatize drug addiction. That's one of the reasons they're saying we should allow junkies to go shoot up safely in our communities. Yet you're opposed to this.
I am opposed to the supervised injection sites, as I call them. They violate federal law. There's a few problems. One, the evidence that they're effective is actually very mixed. Supporters of those sites keep insisting and saying again and again and again that they're effective, they bring addiction rates down, they save lives, and they keep saying it and saying it. But if you actually go look at the studies, the picture is much more mixed. Meanwhile, they bring to the communities that they are in increased drug activity, both consumption and increased drug trafficking. Because if that's where all the customers are, that's where you're going to go deal drugs. And we've seen an uptick in crime around injection sites in several other cities internationally. So the picture's not quite as rosy. But for me, the primary problem is that there's a federal law that says you can't do this. Now, it's not quite as simple as that, and there's litigation in Philadelphia, for example, where a court found differently. The federal law did not bar this. And that needs to be resolved in the federal courts. But I think we live in a time when drug addiction is not nearly as stigmatized as it has before. People understand that addiction is a physiological addiction and people need help to shake it. There are millions of dollars poured into programs to help addicts get over their addiction, get help, go into rehab, all of those things. So yes, we should be doing those things. What injection sites do is normalize that behavior.
Right, exactly. And it's really unfair. Right now, who knows how many people are in jail for low-level pot offenses.
Here, fewer in Massachusetts.
But now they're going to allow, if this spreads throughout the country, people to possess morphine or heroin or opioids or these really much more dangerous drugs, and not only possess them without a conviction, but allow them to do it in front of them.
And you're talking about really dangerous drugs. Right. So in the opioid epidemic, fentanyl is a horribly deadly drug. Proponency sites like to say no one has ever died shooting up in an injection site. That's actually false. So for example, I think about a year ago in Ottawa, someone died shooting up fentanyl at an injection site. And the reason they died is the drug they were taking wasn't exactly fentanyl. Chemically, it was slightly different. And so all the steps the staff took to save that person failed because it wasn't fentanyl, and the person died. You're talking about very dangerous substances. And after the opioid epidemic, we're going to have the crystal meth epidemic. Crystal meth is pouring out of Mexico, dirt cheap, super pure, and in the Midwest and the West, they already have that problem, and that is coming our way.